When we got into the playoffs, a big asset we had is our power play. Our power play was on fire during the playoffs, along with the penalty kill. But the power play really came from, the middle of the pack during the season to really excelling and carrying the load.
Yeah, and I think that's why, it's no surprise that Wolves and Z were among the team leaders in points through the playoffs. I think that's where it all starts on a good power play is, who you got leading you back there. And I think the benefit we had as a team up front is, we can literally go anywhere between, 7 to 9 guys on the power play up front at any given time, with a couple of exceptions of guys that were probably going to be on it no matter what. So if we had, mainly Wolves and Z on the back end running things, and everybody was so in tune with what we were doing, it just created a lot of chemistry. You guys can hop in and out. There was nothing new to learn or anything complex about it. And I mean, anybody that watches or has been through the NHL playoffs, I mean, you can get hot and ride it for a long time, and we were fortunate enough to do that.
You were the captain of the 1999 team. What were your thoughts of that team as a whole?
It's a good question. I mean, I've heard people always refer to that 99 team or the teams we had in that time frame as that we weren't good teams, but we had a really good goalie. And I've always pushed back on that because if you define what a great team is, it's a group of guys that are really focused on the same thing, regardless of their own success or intentions. And I think, how many times have we seen, the Rangers or the Leafs through the 90s and 2000s that signed all these free agents that weren't very good. A lot of people, we may not have had a lot of the high-end talent in all the positions like other teams. But I think the true thing that makes a great team, which we had, is we got along so well off the ice, sometimes is more than we did on the ice. And sometimes that is such a powerful thing for any team in any sport.
Is there any stories that kind of stuck out from that season for you?
Well, the season, the season was just so much fun. Obviously we'd been building the last few years where, we got to the second round and then we got to the conference final and now we got ourselves to the Stanley Cup final. So we felt we continued to gain experience and put ourselves in a position to ultimately play and compete for a Stanley Cup. And, so it was just, I go through the whole season and just how close of a group we were. It was just, there was so much fun in the locker room. Even as a captain, it was pretty much your role raiser in that locker room where you're the guy that was really holding people accountable more so than I did, even though I was a captain. It was I think an important role for our team. But it was such a good group. And I think as we went through the trade deadline period, adding a Stu Barnes and a Joe Juneau, that a lot of that stuff just seemed to add a lot of character and selflessness to the hockey team.
Well, you were our shutdown guy. When you were playing a team, there was a player, a line, whatever it may be, that needed to be stopped, needed to be checked. You were the guy. And you just knew that you were going over every time these guys hit the ice. When we went into that Ottawa series, was there a group of guys or an individual guy that, you were concentrating on?
Yeah, it's primarily the Yashin line. I think, one thing with that role, and I'll say this, it's never a one guy job. I mean, Dixon Ward and Vaclav Varada, who are my line mates, we put a lot of pressure on each other to play the right way, to, possess the puck, focus on offense, because every great player hates playing defense. Not to take anything away from us. We thought we were great players. We love to play defense, so it kind of goes against that. But, in all seriousness, we believed in doing it as a group because, we relied on each other to be the down low guy in our zone if they're the first guy back, and that was a huge responsibility. But I think our main focus was to just literally outwork the other team, possess the puck, and just be physical, And but the one thing it does do, being in that role, especially for me, is it makes it really easy to focus and get prepared for a game because you know what 75 to 80% of your focus in that game is going to be. Which allows you to really, get some studying in and focus in on what you need to do.
Boston, very hard-fought series, physical, team very similar to us. Is there anything that stands out to you in that series?
You know what? I'll be honest. going into the Boston series, I thought if you go through the entire playoffs, Ottawa, Boston, Toronto, Dallas, in retrospect, I thought Boston would have been the easiest team. I mean, Jason Allison was obviously in the midst of his career, putting up great offensive numbers. Obviously, they still had Ray Bork, who, if you have him in your lineup in the playoffs, you're going to want to play real well and win for him. But they just played a great team game. They really did. Playing at the TD Garden was never an easy place to play anywhere in Boston. So, but I think they're a team that were pretty good on special teams as well. So it was kind of a, back and forth for a little while until, obviously middle of the series, we're able to kind of, pull away a little bit.
We moved on from Boston. We played Toronto, and that had to be huge for you. You're a Toronto guy, young guy going in there, establishing yourself, and had to be pretty darn exciting for you.
It was pretty special. I mean, I still remember after the first game that we won, obviously we were elated because, as you remember, our team meal the night before, we had just learned that Roley was going to start the series and not Dom due to an injury. But after the game, after we won, I'm there with, my father, my mother, my brothers, and then there's like a bunch of cousins and stuff like in the background, all of them with Toronto Maple Leafs jerseys. And I remember looking at my dad, I said, I do not want to see these people down here ever again. I said, if they can't
awesome.
come here and support me, I don't want to ever see them down here. And to his credit, they didn't show up again, but it was special because, I tell people the story that even after I was drafted to the Vancouver Canucks in 92, I was still partying downtown Toronto in 93 when the Leafs were in the conference final against the LA Kings. So I was still a Leafs fan at that point, even after being drafted by Vancouver. So I grew up a huge Leafs fan, and I know how much the hockey team, but even more so the playoffs, mean to Toronto Maple Leafs fans. Put on the side note, I also knew how beautiful it was to beat them and destroy that feeling in those people, especially the way we did. I mean, we dominated that series.
I'll tell you what, Matt Sundin was the big player, obviously, for them at the time. And you could just see him at times where his head was spinning. He did not know what to do because it was under so much pressure. There was somebody on him all the time that he really did nothing in that series. He scored a couple goals in the last game, but late in the game, and that was it pretty much for him. Coming back to Buffalo after winning the first game, losing the second in Toronto, the atmosphere that was here was something, I've never experienced, never thought it would happen, but I'll tell you what, it was the most unbelievable feeling coming back into this building, not only leading up to the game, people outside partying, the talk, but it was so electrifying in that building that there was no way Toronto was going to have a chance here when they got into our building.
No, I agree with that. You can just feel it. I'll go back to something I said earlier. I just think based on what we went through the year before, I think we were really motivated to really do the job and get ourselves to the Stanley Cup Final. And knowing that we split, obviously, the first two games in Toronto and put the advantage on our side as far as home ice advantage goes, we wanted to take advantage of that. And it's just, I still get chills when I think of the national anthems, mainly because they do both in Buffalo. It's the only rink in the league. I think they do both every game, regardless of who it is. But obviously, so it was an amazing environment. There's no doubt.
We win in Toronto. You're the captain. You go up for the trophy presentation. You're like not to pick up the trophy. Tell me the story behind why not picking up that trophy.
James Patrick promised me, or made me promise him that I wasn't going to touch the trophy. Now, James Patrick has been around the game a lot longer than I have. So who am I to argue with James Patrick? So I said, Jeep, because we call him Jeep. I said, why can't I touch it? He goes, oh no, you can't touch it. It's bad luck. If you touch it, we're not going to. Now, in retrospect, I wish I did touch it. I wish we all touched it. I mean, that was a huge accomplishment. I wish we celebrated it. Deserved to. But, superstition got the best of me, I guess.
We roll into Dallas. We win the first game. Will scores in overtime. And for me, I think that was the first time when I sat back and go, we got a shot at this. We got a chance of winning. Do you feel the same way?
I really did. I think you can just feel an energetic wave building on our side. And whether that, again, is drawing from our experience and wanting to finish the job, whether it's, obviously we're a much younger team than Dallas was at that time. I don't know what the reason was, but we definitely seemed to have a little bit of momentum and positive energy going our way. And I felt the same way. I'm like, my gosh, we went into Dallas and we split. We're coming home again, and kind of thinking about the Toronto series and what we're able to do coming home after splitting the Toronto series. And obviously you have great intentions with that.
Hey, all said and done, we go boat to the rink, the day or so later, and they have the big Niagara Square, there's tens of thousands of people there. What did you feel? What do you remember from that?
I think it was mixed emotions. I think, as competitors, I think as players, we like, I felt like it was a great tribute to the fans because they were so good to us throughout the entire run. But it was also bittersweet because we didn't win. It's like, what really are we celebrating other than our fans? So I don't think you can, I didn't feel like we were celebrating a conference championship and a Stanley Cup berth. I felt like, in my own mind, it was more of a celebration of how great our fans were, because it truly was special. It was a special run, from the hockey, from the stuff off the ice. I mean, we had a group of guys who were playing, Xbox or whatever, PlayStation in the hotel rooms every night with grilled cheese and banana splits. Like it became a thing that we did on, the night before every game. So it was like a culmination of emotions kind of wrapping up and with this bitterness on how it ended. So it was fun, but it was at the end hard to enjoy, I guess.
Said very well. Hey, thank you for taking the time with us here, and watch the games this week. Enjoy them.
Sounds
Maybe
good,
there'll be a
Fraser.
different outcome.
Yeah, let's hope so.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.